Hello, everyone, and welcome. In today's video, I am going to be creating projects with the brand new Floral Friendship Card Kit from Gina Designs. All of the supplies I'm using in today's video will be linked down below in the video description and over on my blog. Here's a quick look at the Floral Friendship Card Kit. You're getting two large stamps, coordinating dies, a coordinating stencil, and an additional stencil, plus a bonus item. I do walk through this kit in a little more detail in a previous video, which I will link up here at the top. So the sets that I'm going to be using today is the Floral Friendship stamp set from the card kit, but I'm also bringing in the Parisian Charm, which is one of the regular release products for March 2025. I picked out the two large floral images. These have some blooms on the top with these long stems, and I'm going to stamp them using my Misti tool onto some layering weight white cardstock. So I'm going to make sure that my cardstock is tucked into that bottom left-hand corner, and I'm going to ink up the images with Skeleton Leaves ink, which is a light colored ink. I personally like to do my stenciling this way where I stamp the images first in a light colored ink, and then I will go back over the top later on after I'm done ink blending with a dark ink. So I always want to make sure that my cardstock is tucked into the same position and that I leave my stamps in place. I have my cardstock just tacked down to my work surface using repositionable tape, and I lined up the first layer of the stencil. And I'm going to ink blend with sea glass ink first using a mini blending brush. And then I'm going to come in down towards the bottom of the bloom with a detail blending brush and medium lilac ink. So with this particular flower, the first bloom I did is only going to do some of the petals. Then I need to kind of rearrange the stencil to get the other bloom where they're all connected on that same stem. So you do have to shift your stencil at first. It's not going to line up for both blooms right away. And being that the stencil is not necessarily a layering stencil, we're just adding colors to color in the flower. I am going to add that depth and dimension by bringing in that darker color, which is the medium lilac. So I will go through and repeat those same exact steps for all of the blooms. I'm doing the sea glass first, and I kind of fade off into white as I get towards the edge of the petal. And then just down at the bottom of the bloom, bring in that darker color. By using these two different size blending brushes, I am able to really control my area of ink blending and not kind of get into the other blooms or off of the stencil. I shifted my stencil once again and I'm coloring in the other blooms on my second set of stems, doing the exact same thing with the exact same colors. These colors blend beautifully together and it really gives the edge of the petals kind of a highlight. Now, right now, I know it might be kind of hard to see, but I promise in person, it is really easy to line these up. Now I'm going to work on the leaves, and for that, I started with key lime. So it's a really nice bright yellow green. And then towards the bottom of the leaves, that's closest to the stem, I'm coming in with medium spruce. Again, I'm switching between a mini blending brush and a detail blending brush. Those detail blending brushes really help you hone in onto those fine areas. Then again, I just shift my stencil to get the other part of the leaves. Now, this one on the right-hand side, there are two different stencil areas. So it's coloring in two different halves of the leaves. You could actually just do one half of the leaf a bright green, the other half a dark green. You don't necessarily have to blend it like I do, but I think it really brings a pop of color to the images. I'm bringing my cardstock back over to my Misti, tucking it into that bottom left-hand corner, and now I'm going to ink up the images with a black ink. This happens to be Versafine ink, which is going to stay wet just a little bit longer than a regular dye ink, stamping that down to really bring all of those fine lines to the forefront. Now, as I mentioned, it does stay wet a little longer, so I am going to dry that with my heat tool, and then I'm going to line up the coordinating dies, hold them down with a low tack tape, and run them through my die cut machine. I want to add lift and dimension to these images, and that would be really hard to get foam squares behind some of those fine lines. So I die cut out each of those images three more times from white cardstock and layered them together with some liquid glue. Now, I fell in love with the script background from Parisian Charm. So I am lining this up in the center of a piece of white cardstock cut to 4¼ by 5½, conditioning the stamp with my hand just by rubbing my hand over it. And then I'm going to ink it up with sea glass ink. I really had thought about using these skeleton leaves to kind of give it more of a vintage look, but thought I would try out colored ink first. Now, I stamped that down with the sea glass and a little hard to see on camera, but there are some areas that are a little bit darker than others, which I love because I think that just helps give it kind of that vintage look. But decided to come in with that medium lilac. So these are the two colors I used on my flowers. I inked up the bottom half of that script with the medium lilac, dabbed it off towards the top with a paper towel and stamped it down. So now I have kind of this two-tone look, and I love how that came out. And being that I'm using the same colors that I used for my flower, I think really just ties it all together. So I brought in another piece of cardstock and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Now I notice that my margins are not even with the sides and the top and the bottom, just based off of the size of the script. But I'm okay with that because I think by placing my images over the top, I think that's going to kind of hide that fact that they're not even margins. And plus, I have a sentiment yet to add. Now, this next part is totally optional, but I really wanted to add some splatter to this. So I'm bringing in some metallic watercolor. This first panel I am doing with kind of a champagne coppery metallic watercolor. And then the second panel, I am adding gold splatters. So I liked that I had two backgrounds to kind of experiment with. I'm going to dry that again with the heat tool. And then I felt like the splatters needed to be a little bit more bold. So I am bringing in a black ink and a really fine paintbrush and adding black splatters to the background. I thought the black splatters would kind of tie in nicely with the black leaves that are stamped on my image. So while those backgrounds are drying, I am going to stamp my sentiments. I have some scratch cardstock here, picked out two sentiments from the uh, Floral Friendship stamp set, stamping those down in some black ink. And then I'm going to use my coordinating die to die cut out these sentiments. I did also go ahead off screen and I added my card fronts to an A2 size side folding card base and adding my floral images over the top using my liquid glue. And that is just the Connect glue in a fine tip bottle. And I'm going to place something heavy over the top of that for just a minute. Then for the sentiments, I plan on overlapping them across the stems. So I am adding either the large foam squares or the small foam squares, depending which size fit better. Just adding those foam squares to the ends of the sentiment, because then that center point is going to overlap the stems. And I just add a little bit of liquid glue there to secure it in place. And this technique, I think, is really fun if you have any type of floral images or scripty backgrounds in your stash. Just having that scripty background with a white margin, I think, adds so much to your card project. I thought I'd give these iridescent gel pens a try and see how they looked on my card project. All I did was take kind of that silvery one and added dots to my bloom. So there I'm kind of shining it in the light. It's very, very subtle. You can see it more on the black areas of this card project, but it's really pretty and shiny and just that little bit extra that you can add to your card projects without taking over your design. I am really happy with how these cards turned out, and I think this is a type of card project that I could mass produce if I wanted to make a bunch of thank you cards. Now, again, I will have all of my supplies that I used today linked down below in the video description and over on my blog. Here is another video I think you might enjoy. Thanks for watching.